All right, our time here in Round Rock, Texas is complete. We're going to be making our way back down to South Florida, making some pit stops along the way. So if you guys remembered, I drove from Florida all the way here to Austin, Texas last week. I came here to play some live streams. Last night, I lost $52,000 at the Lodge live stream playing 100, 200, 400. It's kind of setting in a little bit now. It hurts. It's not fun, but got to keep going. Can't quit. Got to try to get our money back somehow. First stop is Houston. Going to be playing at Champions. Never been there before. Never been to the city of Houston before. Going to be playing a live stream tonight. It's 5:10, so about 10 times smaller than last night. Going to be hard to get back our 52K, but should be good action. It's Texas. Never been in that card house before, so I'm excited for that. And it kind of is bringing me back to the old days. Back in 2021, I went on a 6-month road trip with Rogue. Just me and him traveling the country. We would go to a city, play for a couple days, go to the next city, play for a month or so, go to the next city. I went to Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Albuquerque, Vegas, Los Angeles, and this kind of trip is bringing me back to those days. It's fun. Just being on the road, just waking up and moving on to the next location, packing light. There's just something fun to that. Obviously, it's not something I want to do all the time, but there's just something cool about living on the road. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna make my way down to Houston. I'll see you guys in about 3 hours. At 5:45 p.m. I arrive at Champions Club here in Houston, Texas, one of the only poker clubs with a hotel attached. So I get my room. Rogue is already comfortably sitting on the bed. I have a live stream that's going off in about 5 minutes, so I've got to hurry. I hop in the shower, change my shirt, head downstairs to the new live stream they have here at Champions Club. We're going to be playing some 5-10, but this game is going to play much bigger than a normal 5-10 game. I get $10,000 to start out with a $3,000 buy-in. Let's go. This game plays pretty big, like I said. Within the first couple orbits, we have the $20 straddle on, the $40 straddle on, and we decide to make the game an uncapped buy-in game. So instead of the $3,000 buy-in to begin with, we make it uncapped, so I buy in for another $5,000. I have $8,000 in my stack and pick up Queen 9 of Hearts on the 9th hand of the night. Raise to 75 in the hijack, and only the straddle makes to call. I flop a flush draw and an overcard on a Jack 7-5 board. I bet close to the pot, and my opponent calls. Turn card 4 of spades. If he checks to me, I'm going to be checking this one back. But he decides now to lead out, which this card would be better for his potential cards calling out of the straddle than my cards raising in the hijack. He can have a lot more straights and 2 pairs than me. He makes it $350. Not going to fold a flush draw and 1 overcard for $350, especially after playing a massive game the night before. So I make the call, and we river the money card with the 8 of Hearts, giving my opponent a straight, but giving me a flush. This card improved me to the 3rd best hand you can have on this board, so I am somewhat surprised when my opponent continues to barrel for $600. He's got $1,500 behind, queen high flush. I'm all in, and he is thinking now for a little bit of time, which I was somewhat surprised with. I felt like a decent amount of the time he was going to be bluffing on this board, given the fact that it's much scarier for my overpairs or my Jack X hands. So when I went all in, he was tanking. I thought it's possible he could have 2 pair, a set, maybe a straight. He does think for a while with a 9-10 of diamonds, that is a straight on the river. He says flush is good and makes the call. Flush is in fact good to take down a pretty big pot here. First 10 hands of the night, and I went over a $5,000 pot going my way. Big shout out here for the production quality and cameras they have here at Champions Club. They have a roaming camera going around getting these close-up shots that you don't normally see on a live stream. Pleasantly surprised when I came and rewatched the footage. Anyway, going on to the next hand, they're doing the nit game. I've already won a hand, so I am safe from the nit game tax. The $20 straddle's on. I put on the $40 restraddle. Button, who hasn't won a hand yet, raises to 125. Big blind calls 125. First straddle calls 125, and I've got ace-2 offsuit in the $40 straddle. Now, once the button opens with the nit game button, and there's 2 calls in between of 2 players who have not won a hand yet, I feel like a lot of the time these guys aren't going to have too strong of a hand. With this being said, I decided to put on a squeeze play here. I bump it to $650, thinking that my raise will look pretty strong given the fact that I do not have a nit game button. I'm more incentivized to call, and given the fact that I'm raising, it's going to look pretty strong. The button calls with 9-10 of clubs. I felt like a lot of the time the button with his stack size versus this raise would either do a lot of shoving or folding. So when he calls, that's basically the worst option. That means I have to play out of position. The other players end up folding their cards, and now we are heads up against the button. The only thing that the call pre-flop tells me is that he has a mediocre strength hand. So when the board comes out 9-2-5 with 2 diamonds, I think my ace-2 is going to be ahead a decent amount of the time. If he had any big pocket pair like 10s plus, he would just jam all in pre-flop. I think he's going to have a lot of Broadway cards, hands like King-Queen, King-Jack offsuit, Jack-10 suited. He's going to have some hands like Ace-Jack, Ace-Queen, and I'm beating all those hands, so I put out a bet of $400, hoping this one gets through, but my opponent jams all in. Jams all in for $2,000 total, and now I have to do a little bit of mathematics in my head. Worst case scenario, he has a set. I don't think he has a set very often. He could have an overpair to the board. In that case, we have around 25% equity, which I'm getting a decent price. Also, we could be ahead against Queen Jack of diamonds, King Queen of diamonds, Jack 10 of diamonds. So I make the call for $1,600 more, and just like that, we're playing a $5,700 pot with ace-2 offsuit, bottom pair. We do have some backdoors, backdoor straight draws, backdoor flush draws, an overcard to what most likely kind of pair he has. They ask me once or twice. I'm just going to run it once on this entire stream. We're going to go for blood, either win a big one or lose a big one. Turn doesn't improve me. River doesn't improve me. And just like that, all my profit from the first hand with a flush is going to my opponent on the button. Definitely a hand I didn't need to take as a 3-bet bluff pre-flop. A little bit punty, but I went with my read that my opponents weren't that strong, and they weren't. Just got a little unlucky that he outflopped me. But in this game where there's a lot of aggressive action, I'm okay with showing that I'll re-raise with a hand like ace-2 because at one point I'll have it and maybe they won't believe me. This next hand has a weird dynamic. As the dealer deals out the card, she gives me a king of spades as my first card, and the second card she goes to give me exposes as the king of diamonds, so I would have had pocket kings. She takes back the king of diamonds and gives me one more card, which is the queen of spades, so I have king-queen suited. The $40 straddles on, and when it calls to me, I decided to just call $40 given the fact that my high card has already been exposed, so there's just one less king in the deck. I'm trying to see a flop with this hand, but I'm not looking to go too crazy. The player to my left who raises is Outlaw, and so far I've seen him blast off a lot. He has put in some big bluffs and been playing a lot of hands, so I want to see a flop against him, even though I am in a tough position given the fact that I'm out of position. So I make the call and we see a 9-9-3 one spade board. All in all, I completely miss, but on this flop, I can definitely represent some 9x hands, and I also have some backdoor straights, flushes, and 2 overcards of the board. So when he bets out 175, I make the call, looking to potentially bluff on later streets or pick up some equity, which I do. It's the queen of clubs, now giving me top pair king kicker, bringing in a flush draw and straight draw. I check and flow over to the initial raiser, and now he continues to fire out for a $550 bet. I put in a lot of hours and played at a lot of different locations around the country, so I feel like when I'm at a poker table, I can pretty easily summarize who the action players are, who the good players are, who the bad players are, and this player to my left is definitely capable of putting out some big bluffs. So when you're facing a player who's capable of putting out big bluffs, you want to let them hang themselves when you have such a strong hand. I don't think raising here would ever be good. Kind of hard to get called by worse and shuts down all of his bluffs, so I make the call for $550. And the final card is the Jack of Spades. This does bring in 8-10 for a straight and King 10, and against a player who likes to barrel and raise his pre-flop, he can have all of those cards. So when I check to him, the pot's around $1,900. I'm expecting him to bet a lot of the time, obviously with his value hands, and also with his bluffs, but what I wasn't expecting was the size he chooses. He fires out a very big size of $2,700 on this river. Yikes, we're facing an overbet, a big overbet, and all we have is just one measly pair on a pretty connected paired board. I mean, we lose to a lot of hands. Pocket threes, pocket jacks for a full house, a 9 for trips, pocket queens for a full house, king 10 for a straight, and also I feel like this opponent is good enough to bet pocket aces or pocket kings for this sizing targeting my Queen X holdings on this paired board. I'm not really sure what to do. I go back and forth in my head. Ideally, when someone bets over the size of the pot, they're representing full houses or straights. I don't think he has pocket jacks very often. I think that hand would check back the turn or not bet as big. I have a queen in my hand, so I block pocket queens for a full house. And also, king 10 is definitely harder to have given the fact that I have a king, and a king was exposed pre-flop. I'm really going back and forth in my head. This opponent has got caught bluffing numerous times so far on this stream, so I feel like it's a little bit less likely that he's putting out a big bluff, given the fact that his credit is just not going to be there. I don't know. I don't really know what to do. Top pair, I'm losing to a lot of hands, but I'm also beating some bluffs. Against a crazy player, I take a little bit of time, and finally I come up with my decision.
A lot of 10-9s, 9-8s. He doesn't have to have ace-queen here, and like so, taking it down. Good call.
I eventually put in the chips and get shown ace-7 of clubs for a missed flush draw, ace-high. I like his bluff, given the fact that I limp called pre-flop. I really will never have a strong queen, and if I didn't have a queen, I probably would have found the fold, but given the action pre-flop with the exposed king, I decided to go with a limp call strategy. It's kind of funny, with that king being exposed, I ended up winning a way bigger pot than if I would have had pocket kings. I probably would have raised and bet the flop and won. Either way, we take down over a 7K pot. We are now up around 3,000 on the night. When I play poker, I feel like I have a lot of gears. Sometimes I'm just pretty passive, seeing some flops, don't bluff too often. Other times I'm very aggressive post-flop, putting in some big bluffs, and also aggressive pre-flop. Kind of depends on the day, it depends on my mood, and depends on the game. Well, this game is very aggressive. A lot of players who are raising, re-raising, and re-raising that raise. So I feel like when I'm in one of these games, in order to compete against these guys, I got to fight back with some aggression as well. In this hand, there's a hijack open, a small blind 3-bet, and with queen 9 of diamonds in the big blind, I elect to put in a 4-bet bluff. I raise this re-raise to $775. The nit game is back on as well, so I have to win a hand in order to not pay out the nit tax. I feel like a cold 4-bet coming from me is going to look pretty strong. I am known to be a little bit on the tighter side, but Max doesn't really care. He makes the call out of position. I feel like a lot of the time he's going to have middling pocket pairs, ace-high hands, Broadway cards. So when the flop comes down 5-6-2 with a flush draw, I completely miss, but I feel like Max is also going to miss a lot of the time as well. From what I've heard and seen throughout the past couple years, in a 4-bet pot, you do want to bet smaller, I think. So I decided to bet here around 1/4 size of the pot, $475. Although I do think I should be going bigger on this particular board. None of us are going to be hitting this flop with any sets or straights. All the times I'm going to have aces, kings, and queens. I want to bet big to get max value from his pocket 8s, 9s, and 10s, and flush draws. Anyway, I go small, 1/4, back over to Max. He's got king 10 of hearts. Should be an easy fold. But he doesn't fold. He check raises me to 1,500. Wow. Interesting play. Now, if I did have aces, kings, or queens, or a flush draw, I would just make the call, but what the heck is he raising on this flop in a cold 4-bet pot? I feel like all the hands he would show up here with would just be a call, considering that I can have aces, kings, and queens. I think about ripping it all in, but if he has a flush draw or a pair, he probably isn't folding, so I just let go of my queen 9, and we get beat by the king 10 of hearts. Technically, he was ahead. Really crazy play there by him, kind of a suicide bluff. Unfortunately, I didn't have a hand to call him down with. Max takes this one down with the aggressive line post-flop. After getting outplayed there by Max, I do get an opportunity to get some money back where there's a raise. Max calls. I call on the button, and there's one more caller. We go 4 ways, 4 or 5 of spades for me to an open-ended straight draw. Checks over to Max in the cutoff, who bets out 225, and I'm the only caller. Turn card doesn't improve me. It's a 7 of clubs. But now Max checks over to me. I feel like he could be stabbing pretty wide on this flop in position, especially with the nit game. So once he checks, I'm going to start a bluff here, trying to represent hands like queen 9 through king queen. I bet out $800 here, trying to get him to fold out hands like pocket 4s, 5s, 6s, and 8s, and also get him to fold out hands like ace 4, ace 5 that stabbed on the flop. Max doesn't think for too long and calls, which I feel like he would do with a weaker queen or maybe he's got a hand like ace 3, ace 2, ace 4, ace 5. So we're going out to the river. I'm hoping for some help, and I get it. It's an ace. That is the nuts, guys. That's the best hand possible. What a glorious feeling when you bluff on the turn and get there on the river. And the nit game is on as well. I think I'm going to bet big. I feel like my line doesn't make too much sense here. If he does have an ace X hand like ace 3, ace deuce, ace 4, ace 5, he'll call, and maybe he'll even call with a queen X hand. So I bet the size of the pot, $2,400. Back over to my opponent in the cutoff. He thinks for not too long and calls. Straight is good to win over a $7,000 pot. I think my opponent misread my cards. He thought I was bluffing because he shows his cards as queen jack. Queen is no good. Straight is good to win a big pot. What a swingy session so far. I was up money, down money, up money, down money, up money again. $14,000 stack in the game for $8,000. Let me do some math. Carry the 1, divide by 4, square root. Yep. We are up $6,000 so far on this day. Pretty crazy because the day before I played this live stream, I was super card dead at the lodge, hardly made any hands. And within 2 hours of this Houston live stream game, I've already gotten more hands and played more pots than I did in all 2 days playing at the lodge. Pretty crazy, kind of tilting. Wish I could have ran better in the bigger games, but not going to complain. Up $6,000 with 2 hours to go on the stream. With the $20 straddle on, Michael, who had just gotten stacked the hand before, is getting chips. Doesn't even have chips in front of him. Raises to $80. He gets 3-bet next to act by the hijack to $300. Back over to me now in the big blind, and I look down at ace-king offsuit. Kind of an interesting spot. I would say pre-flop-wise, both of these players were definitely the tighter ones at the table. So when there's a raise from early position and a 3-bet next to act, I feel like both of them are fairly strong. Instead of putting in a cold 4-bet here out of position against two tighter players, my plan here is to call, thinking that Michael, who needs to win the nit game, and also only has 100 big blinds, maybe shipping it all in, and then I can see what the hijack player does as well, and I can consider my options if it gets back over to me. So I just make the call here with ace-king in the big blind. I think it's okay to call sometimes with the really strong hands to balance out the times, or I'll want to call with hands like pocket 9s or 10s or ace-queen suited. Back over to Michael, who does not go all in. He just makes a call for $300. We're going 3 ways, almost $1,000 in the middle to ace, 2, queen, 2 diamonds. I have a very disguised, under-repped, top paired top kicker in a 3-bet pot. I check, Michael checks, and the hijack player sitting here with pocket jacks checks behind. Turn is the 9 of spades. I'm going to continue to under-rep my hand as well, hoping that someone will take a stab with a worse hand or potentially bluff. So I check. Michael now with top 2 pair with around $1,700 in his stack fires out a fairly large bet, which I feel like he could be doing with a wider range of hands. Could be doing this with flush draws, straight draws and flush draws, weaker ace-x hands than me. Given the fact that he does not have too much left in his stack and the fact that I'm super under-repped, I feel like if I go all in here, he's going to call me with any ace. He's going to call with any flush draw. He's going to call with any pair and flush draw as well. We should be in good shape. He really shouldn't have any sets on this board other than pocket 9s. Turn in a set. Really shouldn't have too many 2 pairs except for ace queen. So I go all in. Back over to Michael, who snap calls. Not great once he snap calls. Asks once or twice. I say 1 time. And we're looking for a king. He shows the ace queen. A little unfortunate. We had him pipped pre-flop way ahead, but then he outflopped us on the flop 1 time, and I do not get there. No king for me. And another big pot not going my way. This is a very swingy session. Winning and losing and winning and losing. This one was somewhat tilting because I was so far ahead pre-flop. However, if I would have put in that cold 4-bet, he probably would have folded. Maybe he would have jammed ace-queen suited. Who knows? Either way, a big pot not going our way this time. After this ace-king hand, I go a little bit card dead, don't play a hand for a while. I do end up making a straight against 2 pair in the nit game. Bet big on the river. He folds. I win this pot and get rid of my nit button. Moving on to the next hand where I'm on the button. It folds to me, and I look down at pocket kings. There's a $40 straddle on, so I make it $200 to go. Nit game is also on again. This is a great spot for me, considering that it's going to look like I'm pretty weak raising the button. I'm hoping maybe one of my opponents senses some weakness, potentially, and puts in a re-raise, but my opponent here in the $20 straddle makes the call with the 8-6 offsuit. This is what makes that Nick game so great. He would never call $200 with 8-6 unless he had to win a pot. We end up going here to a flop of ace high. Of course, always an ace when you've got pocket kings. Don't see too much point in betting here, button versus straddle, so I just check back. I also have the king of clubs on the 9 turn. He checks to me again. I check back for a second time thinking I'm going to get more value out of this hand by potentially inducing him to bluff than betting and getting called by a worse hand. 9 of clubs on the river pairs the board, brings in that flush, and now my opponent bets out $300. Could raise thin to get called by an 8, a 2, or a pocket pair, but I just make the call and we get shown an 8 with pocket kings. I definitely missed a little bit of value. Could have bet the turn once he checked to me and could have bet the river, but I was enjoying one of the best burgers I've ever had, and I was trying to just get this hand over with as quick as possible so I could go back to enjoy my burger. A few hands later, I finished my burger. I'm ready to play some poker. Raised to 125 with pocket sevens over a big straddle. I get one caller from the button and go heads up to an ace 7-4 flop. Middle set on an ace high board. Nice. I bet out 125 and the button makes the call. Turn queen of spades with a flush draw on board. After him calling pre-flop and then calling on this flop, I think he's going to have flush draws and ace-x holdings, and all those hands are not going to fold to a bet. So I decided to go with a big bet, a slight over bet on this turn. I bet $825 into around a $600 pot, and my opponent makes the call again. I feel like a lot of the time he's going to have flush draws and hands like ace-10, ace-jack, ace-9, ace-queen maybe. So when the river card comes out, the 9 of clubs, as you guys can see, flush gets there. Not too happy about that, but I still think he can have some ace-x holdings that will call a bet, even maybe some 2-pair holdings like ace-7, ace-4, ace-queen. So I want to bet a sizing now that those 1-pair or weaker 2-pair holdings can call. I don't want to bet over the size of the pot. I feel like if I bet over the size of the pot, it's harder to get called by worse hands. So I just make it $900 here. If he raises this bet, I'm going to throw up that damn burger I just ate, but looking over at his body language, he's giving off the tells and the signs that he's contemplating a fold or a call. I don't think anyone ever gives off this body language and then raises, so I feel very comfortable with my set now, knowing that he's not going to raise, knowing that he doesn't have a flush because he would snap call a flush. I can rest easy knowing that the burger I just ate will not come up on the table because he's not going to raise, and eventually he makes the fold, a very good disciplined fold. I mean, I think it's a pretty standard fold with ace-jack, but all in all, good fold by my opponent. Not a great fold for me for making money. I do think that 9 of clubs killed my action because he probably thought I was betting with a flush draw, maybe thought I got there. So if it wasn't the 9 of clubs and I bet 900, I feel like he would call. Always nice to flop a set. Wish I could have flopped more sets yesterday. Maybe I wouldn't have lost $50,000. Moving into the last 2 hands of the night, Nick game is on. For some of these guys, for me, I've already won a hand. $40 straddle is on, and Michael, who got me earlier, ace-queen versus ace-king, and I doubled him up. I think he lost a little bit of that money, and now he raises to 125 with around $2,500 in his stack. Folds to me now in the big blind. I have pocket tens. Interesting spot. If I was closing the action versus an under-the-gun raise, I would just call with pocket tens. But with 2 good players to my left, potentially players who could squeeze, and with the Nick game on, I think my hand wants to 3-bet. Pocket tens are just too strong to flat call here. So I re-raise. I make it $450 with intentions of snap calling if he goes all in. I think he could go all in with some worse pocket pairs and some hands that we're flipping against. With the $40 straddle on, he only has about 60 bigs. Pocket tens, 60 big blinds with Nick game. I think we're just going to get that in, which is what happens. He jams all in. I snap call. As the entire night has gone, one time, I like what they say here in Houston. They say, you want to rip it, or let's rip it, or something like that. Instead of saying one time, they just say rip it. And I kind of like that. I'm going to start using that term. Anyway, I get the bad news. Pocket kings versus my pocket tens. Definitely a swingy session for me. I've won and lost some massive pots, but I kind of feel good about this one. I feel like a 10 may be coming.
1100.
I feel like I'm going to hit a 10.
Felt like a good spot.
I feel like a 10's probably coming. Or some diamonds.
Ooh.
How did you guys
Wow,
know?
a 10 right out of the gate. So
I know.
but
How did you know?
backdoor clubs, backdoor straight draw, or a king.
Another 10.
Welcome to Texas. Like so.
One more 10.
Oh, goodness.
Ran bad and I lost ace king.
Well, we have
There you go.
outs now.
Sweat, sweat, sweat.
6 outs
Say the
for
king.
Michael.
I feel the queen's
Or a
coming.
queen. I think it's going to be a 6. 6 of hearts.
Lexo calls for the 6 and gets wow. Does get a 6.
I definitely just Mike Postle, Robbie J. Lude this hand, calling out the 10 and hitting it on the flop, and then calling out a break 6 on the river, and the 6 coming, winning a big pot. I got it in bad, pocket 10s versus pocket kings, but my strategy in poker is to try to get it in good, get my money in while I'm ahead, but sometimes you get your money in bad and you still win. That's definitely a good trait and characteristic to have in the game of poker, is being able to get it in bad and come from behind with a win, moving into the last hand of the night. First player calls 2 starbursts, and I raise a yellow pelican, and the rest of the farmers drop their crops back off at the butcher, back over to the minister, who puts on his purple jacket. And if you're asking yourself, Lex, what the hell are you talking about? You passed the test. I notice a lot of people by the end of the video just aren't really paying attention to what I'm saying. They're just kind of letting the video ride in the background and daydreaming something else. So now that I have you guys back on task, I have all your attention, let's move on to the last hand of the night together now, okay? Everybody listening? Good. I raise 9-10 of diamonds. My opponent limp calls with pocket aces. Interesting strategy. Going heads up here in position to king 6-7. 2 hearts, 1 diamond, flop a gut shot straight draw to the nuts, backdoor flush draw on a king high board. Should have the range advantage when my opponent just limp calls pre-flop. However, he can have hands like 6-7, pocket 6s, and pocket 7s. I'm going to start off with a bet here, looking to barrel. If I pick up some equity, cards like a jack, a queen, a diamond, I'll continue to barrel. If the turn card's another king or an ace, I'll definitely continue to barrel. But now, to my surprise, my opponent check raises me to $825. Now, we're pretty deep stacked here. I believe he's got around $9,000 in his stack. I definitely have some implied odds later on if I make a straight, but with those 2 hearts on the board, I think he could easily be check raising a flush draw, and that really cuts down on some of my outs. I'm going back and forth, could call, could fold, but I elect to fold, thinking that this is the last hand of the night. He's probably going to be pretty strong. Probably isn't bluffing that often, given the fact that he was up a lot of money on the session. And I get to see later on that he was slow playing, trying to get a little bit slick with the limp call pre-flop with pocket aces. I always think to myself, man, punish that limp call. Punish that slow play. Give me the 10-10-4 flop or the 9-10-6 flop one time. Well, in a crazy different world, right? Anyway, the stream ends up coming to a close after this hand. I've enjoyed some good talk. I've enjoyed some good food. Ate some salmon, burger, and chocolate cake. I'm going to call it a night, booking a big win, go upstairs and see my dog. I end up racking up my chips, heading to the cage, and cashing out for the night. Okay. And for the 3rd week in a row, we're doing an outro from my hotel room, this time in Houston, Texas at Champions Club. This place is awesome. I gotta say, I've never been here before. I didn't really know what to expect, but I'm in my hotel room. Just about 300 yards that way is the live stream table. Maybe not even 300 yards. I got here today from Round Rock, drove about 2.5 hours with Rogue, got some Chipotle, checked into the hotel, took a shower, went right downstairs. Boom, I was playing poker. 5, 10, 20. It was a massive game. It was way bigger than 5, 10. There was straddles, re-straddles, triple straddles, quadruple straddles, uncapped buy-in. I bought it for $8,000, playing the knit game. A lot of action players as well. Like, the players were good. They all kind of knew what they were doing, but they didn't stray. They didn't hide away from action. I think sometimes those are the best games. Instead of like having a bunch of recreational players who are super passive, sometimes when you get good, solid pros that are just battling, boom, 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 raise, re-raise, all in, kind of makes the game fun and entertaining. And also, I ran pretty good. I ended up winning a lot more pots than I lost. I beat pocket kings there at the end with my pocket 10s. I made a flush, flopped a set, held up in some big spots, and called down some bluffs. And yeah, things went my way today. Ended up profiting $9,000, so I'll take it. Yesterday, the last video you guys just watched, I lost $52,000 at the lodge. Today I ran well, won $9,000 back. It's kind of sick though, because if I would have ran the way I ran today, yesterday, in the 100, 200, 400 game, I probably would have won like $75,000. But I lost $50,000 because I ran super bad. And yeah, that's what's been happening in these big live streams. I tend to run good when it doesn't really matter, like the 5-10 games. And then when it really matters, when the big money comes into play, I just run like shit. And I played 2 high stakes live streams and lost over $100,000. Kind of sucks. I lost $52,000 at Hustler, and I lost $52,000 yesterday at the Lodge. Kind of my high stakes debut this year, playing some big games, and just haven't been able to get it done. Haven't been able to run good, but I feel like, it's just time. It's just variance. It's just, I'll get there someday. I'll be able to hopefully win. I mean, I'll be able to hopefully have a 50K day, 100K day. We'll see. But all in all, my arm's getting tired here. All in all, I would rate this place here, Champions Club in Houston, Texas, a 10 out of 10. I had a great time. I'm only here for 24 hours, but the fact that there's a hotel room right above the poker room, and the fact that the food was the best casino or poker food I've ever had in my entire life. I got here, I was hungry, I got a grilled salmon with couscous, never had that before. That was an amazing meal. I then got a burger, one of the best burgers I've ever had. Other guys at the table got steak. They were getting like specialty drinks. I got a chocolate cake with ice cream. It was amazing. The service was great. The dealers were awesome. Staff was really, helpful and accommodating. And all in all, I mean, this place is really cool. I want to be back. It's super easy to get to from Florida. I can fly in here anytime. So I plan on coming back, maybe staying for a couple of days, playing some big games. And also, I get to stay here with Rogue. It's a pet-friendly hotel. So all in all, I'll give it a 10 out of 10 Champions Club. It's been awesome. If you guys have not checked out this poker room in Houston, got to check it out. If you haven't watched the live stream yet, tune into their live stream. They run games just like the game I played every single week. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Next up is Mississippi at the Beau Rivage. I'm leaving for that tomorrow. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I'll see ya.